What is the count now? So we are done with first three units. Third unit, you still have any doubts, ma? It's there. You can ask me anytime. Before that, we will see the syllabus. Guys, if you see your unit 4, right? So in that, what we are going to discuss is memory management and virtual memory, right? So we are going to discuss about the memory management. We all know that one of the operating system concept or operating system service is memory management, right? So you all know that if you want to run a program for the process execution, right? For the process execution, right? The program must be loaded into the memory. Why? Because the CPU can take the program or the instructions only from the memory, right? Your programs first has to be loaded into the memory, right? So under this memory management, we will be learning that what are the different memory spaces that are available, right? And how the memory can be managed, right? If the program size is not enough to fit in the main memory, what actions to be taken, right? How means right? Their swapping can be applied, right? And what are the different techniques that are there for the memory management, right? All the things we are going to learn here. We have a problem called fragmentations here. So we'll see what is internal fragmentation, external fragmentation, like that. So first, let's start with what is logical memory, what is physical memory, right? The address space, the logical address space and the physical address space. So 1 second, guys. Yes, ma'am, right? Sorry, I got a call. Right. So in that we will be seeing what is logical address space or physical address space, right? Then we'll discuss about swapping. What is swapping? Then what is contiguous allocation, right? Then what is paging, what is segmentation, and we'll be mixing both paging and segmentation, that is segmentation with paging. Then what is demand paging and what are the page replacement. What do you mean by page replacement? And we have different page replacement algorithms in your syllabus, right? So these are the things we are going to learn. So your fourth unit is a bit small only comparatively third unit, right? So let's start with yes, the basics. See, memory management will be learning about background, history, right? So what are the requirements for the memory management? Then we'll see what is swapping and what is contiguous memory allocation, right? Paging, what is a page table? So for the paging, we will be using a page table. What is the structure of that? Then segmentation, right? Now, what are the objectives of the chapter in this memory management? What we are going to learn? So to provide a detailed description of various ways of organizing memory hardware. So we'll be learning about different ways of organizing your memory hardware, right? Memory unit is a hardware unit, right? So we'll be having RAM chips and as well you'll be having hard disk. All these are the hardwares, right? So how to organize the memory hardware we'll be learning, and what are the different memory management techniques. So how you are managing the memory, that means how you are loading the programs into the memory and how to fetch the instructions from the memory whenever a program is getting executed, right? So in that we'll be learning about paging and segmentation techniques. So these are the memory management techniques, and provide a detailed description of Intel Pentium that supports both pure segmentation and segmentation with paging, right? So we'll be seeing one example here, right? Now, then see, let's start with the syllabus. If you see the background, right? Yes. So in the memory management, we mainly concentrate on main memory, right? In the memory management, we mainly concentrate on the main memory, right? Now, the main purpose of a computer system is to execute programs, yes or no? If you take any computer system, its main purpose is to execute programs. It has to execute the programs. Then, during the execution of these programs, right? Not only program, together with the data, I can say, right? During the execution of these programs, together with the data, right? They access together the data they access must be stored in the main memory. Yes or no? The same thing I told you, right? So that is the first point here. It will tell you program must be brought into memory and placed within a processor for it to be run. That means from the secondary memory, it has to be loaded into the main memory to get the program run or to execute the program, right? So what is a memory? First of all, what is a memory? Main memory consisting of large array of bytes. So if you see the main memory, it is consisting of a large array of bytes. Each byte has its own address. So how you are going to refer them as I told you, main memory consisting of large array of bytes, right? And here each byte has its own address, right? Now, CPU fetches the instructions from the memory according to the value of the program counter. So in the program counter, it will have the address of the next instruction to be fetched, right? So based on the address, the CPU fetches the instructions from the memory. CPU fetches the instructions from the memory, right? And if you see the means here, it is telling you some points here. Main memory and registers are only storage CPU can only storage CPU can access directly. CPU cannot take from the secondary memory. It can take the data only from the main memory and the registers, right? Now, registers access in one CPU clock, right? When the CPU wants to take any data from the registers, right? The registers can access in one CPU clock, right? And Here the main memory can take many cycles. Registers nunchi తీసుకోవడానికి it requires only CPU clock, one tick, right? Then we have a cache memory. I can say what is the need of cache memory also we will see, right? It's a cache memory which sits between the main memory and the CPU registers, right? Protection of the memory requires to ensure the correct operation. So we will see in detail about this in the next coming topics, right? Now uh, let's start with the basic hardware before we see the base register and the limit registers, right? There is a small topic called basic hardware where we are learning about the basics, right? What is that is here there are some points, right? There are some points which I want to discuss under this basic hardware is uh, first, the CPU can access data directly from the main memory and the process registers, right? So what are the points I discussed here, which are coming under this basic hardware, right? The first thing is the CPU can access the data directly from the main memory and the process registers only, right? Here the main memory and the process registers are called direct access storage devices. Guys, these are called direct access storage devices. Let me open the whiteboard, right? So whatever the yes, right. So under this basic hardware, what we are discussing is, so we all know that the CPU can access the data. If you take it as CPU, it can access the data only from main memory or registers, right? So these main memory and registers are called direct access storage devices. Direct access storage devices. Guys, you are getting me? Right? What are these main memory and the registers are called? Direct access storage devices, right? So any instruction in execution or any data being used by the instructions must be in one of these direct access storage devices. So whenever any process is executing in the CPU, right? Right? The process is set of instructions, right? So any instruction in execution or any data being used, it has to be either in the main memory or either be in the register. So that is the reason we are telling that any instruction in execution, right, or any data being used by the instruction must be in one of these direct access storage devices, right? Now, if the data is not there in the memory, let's consider if the data is not there in the main memory, right, then that data must be moved to the main memory before CPU can operate on them. So before giving the process to the CPU, the entire instructions and the data that is required by the process has to be loaded in the main memory. It has to be loaded in the main memory, right? And registers that can build into the CPU are accessible within one CPU clock. If it is registers, it require only one CPU clock. If it is main memory, it may take more, right? It may take many CPU clock cycles, right? And then how the communication between the CPU and the main memory can be done is it can be done through memory bus. It can be done through memory bus, right? What are the link between your CPU and the memory? It is CPU bus, right? And one more thing, let's consider the process is getting executed. Let's consider the process is getting executed, right? And remember, the instructions that are required for the process execution, or the data that is required to complete the instruction, right, is not available in the main memory. Let's consider, right? Then that situation is called stall, stall. Let's consider you started executing the program, but remember, whatever the instruction that is required for the completion of this instruction, that is not available in the main memory. Let's consider, right? The processor needs to stall since it does not have the required data to complete the instruction that it is executing. So to avoid this, what we do is we try to include a memory called cache memory. We try to include a memory called cache memory, which will be implemented in between your main memory and CPU. Right? You're getting me, guys? That means because the memory needs more cycles, and the data is not available within the CPU registers. Yeah, you try to understand me, guys, what is stall is. A program is getting executed in the CPU, and the data that is required to complete the instruction is not there in the CPU registers. Then what it has to do? It has to fetch from the main memory, because that is not there in the registers. But fetching the data from the main memory takes more cycles. It requires more cycles, right? And it has to be traveled through the memory bus. That means definitely it needs more time, right? So within the time, the CPU has to wait. That situation I am calling it as stall, right? The CPU has to wait. So to avoid this, what we are doing is we are keeping a cache memory. So that the cache will have all frequently executed instructions, right? It will have all the instructions that are required for the process execution. It will be holded in the cache, so that you can avoid the memory stall. You understand, guys? This points what I discussed so far. Yes or no? You understand what is memory stall? To avoid it, what we are doing? We are using cache memory, right? Now let's start with the other topic, that is base register and limit register, right? Base register and limit register. Right. Now, what do you mean by base register and limit register? Right. So each process has a separate memory space. Yes or no? Whenever you are loading the program in the memory, so I can represent the memory like this. Let's consider this is my memory. So in the memory, the programs are loaded like this. P1, P2, P3, like that, right? And here each process has a separate memory space. Each process has its own memory space. Yes or no? Right? That protects the processes from each other. That means this process cannot refer to the other process location. So to avoid that, the process memory space has to be protected, right? You are getting me? Why? Because when your system supports multi-programming, definitely multiple processes will be running simultaneously, right? Yes or no? Right? Your programs, that means number of processes will be loaded into the memory at a time. So for that, to protect one process from the other processes, right? We will be using this base register and limit registers. right? So there are two registers which will provide the protection. You can call them as base register. You can call them as base register and limit register. You have two registers now, right? Now, what is this base register? Base register holds the smallest legal physical memory address space, right? In the physical memory, you have physical memory and logical memories, right? So main memory is called logical, right? Physical means your hard disk where the programs are permanently stored. So what is this base register will tell you is, it will tell you the smallest legal physical memory address. And limit register specifies the size of the range, that is the process size. That means the base register will hold the starting address of the process, right? It will hold the starting address of the process. That means in your memory where the process is starting, and limit will tell you the size of the memory. That means your size of a process. You can call it as process size. Right? Example, I'll show you the example here. See, this is the example, right? So here, see, for the first process, here he has taken the example for the second process, the second one. The base is 30040. That means here, actually, your process is getting started. So it is called base address. And limit, what do you mean by limit is, what do you mean by this limit is the size of the process. The size of the process. The size is 120900. So it can be in terms of bytes. Right? It started at 340 byte and its actual size is 1,20,900 bytes. Let's consider, right? So, you are getting me, guys? Right? You are getting me, no? So where the next process can be allocated? It can be allocated at 420940 because the base is this and the program size is this. So what will be the next available memory space is starting at 420940. You got it, guys? Right? You are getting me what is base address and what is yes, ma, what is base address and what is limit? You understand, no? Right? So base address will be holded in the base register. Base address will be holded in the base register and the limit will be holded in the limit register. Right, we'll be using two registers here, base register and limit register. So whenever a program is loading, right, then it will be the starting address, the base address will be holded in the base register and the size will be loaded in the limit register. Right? You're getting me, guys? Right. I have given you the example. 1 o'clock work. Now, the base and limit register can be loaded only by the operating system by using a special privileged instructions that can be executed only in the kernel mode. Remember? Right? The base and limit registers can be loaded only by the OS. So whenever you are loading the program, right, then the CPU only can able to update this base and limit registers by making use of a special privileged instructions that can be executed only in the kernel mode. Right? Now, protection of the memory space can be executed or it can be accomplished by having a CPU hardware compare every address generated in the user mode with the registers. So how the protection can be done is, right, protection of memory space is accomplished by having the CPU hardware. It will compare every address generated in the user mode within the register. So any attempt by a program execution in the user mode to access the OS memory or the other user's memory result in a trap, which treats the attempt as the fatal error. which attempts the right will treats the attempts as the fatal error, right? So it will prevent a user from either accidentally or deliberately modifying the code or the data structure of the other users and the operating system, right? So let me see if the diagram is, if not there, I'll draw, right? So now see guys how this can be done, how the protection can be done is, yes, ma'am. See, I'm drawing the simple diagram which will explain you how how the other processes memory can be protected from the users, right? So let's consider this is the CPU. So it will generate the address, right? And there is a base register, and this is the base plus limit. Right? So we'll be checking a condition here. If the address generated by the CPU is greater than or equal to the base, greater than or equal to base, right? If it is greater than or equal to base, then only it will allow. If no, that means what? See, a program is loaded, ma. Let's consider here is your program, right? So the starting is base. This is the base, and this is limit. Now, if your means if the user is trying to get the access to the address, then that will be checked. Like if this address, whatever the generated address is greater than or equal to base, then only it will be allowed. Greater than or equal to 120, which is in between this, which is in between this region. That means that program belongs to that user only. You try to understand this, ma, right? So whatever the address which was generated, if it is greater than or equal to the base, right, then only it will be allowed, right? One more condition also will be checked. If the address is less than base plus limit, if it is greater than or equal to base and less than or equal to base plus limit, then only that will be allowed to refer to that location. If it is S. If no, will be treated as, for these two cases, it will be treated as trap. That means this user is trying to get the access to the location which is not there in the region. Which is not there in the region. That means which is less than base or greater than base plus limit. That means he is trying to get the access to the illegal location. Then the user will not be allowed to execute this or to get access to that location. So that will be treated as the trap, or you can call it as fatal error. Call it as fatal error. You got it, guys? So what this will help, right? Or it will prevent a user from either accidentally or deliberately, right, access OS memory or the other user's memory. Understood, guys? Yes? Yeah. Now, OS executing in the kernel mode is given unrestricted access to both OS memory and user's memory. So this provision allows the OS to do certain tasks. So what it will do is, see, when the operating system is getting executed in the kernel mode, it will be given unrestricted access to both OS memory and the user memory. Remember guys, your entire memory, here memory means main memory only you consider. So OS will be loaded first and the programs will be loaded, right? So if the OS is getting executed in the kernel mode, it will get unrestricted access to both the OS memory and the program's memory. So why it is getting access to the unrestricted access is to do some things. What are those? Whenever any program is getting executed, then what the OS will do is it will load OS program in the memory. First, it will load user programs into the memory. Avuna kada? Whenever any program is in the ready state, it want to get executed, then OS will do, what OS will do is it will load the program into the main memory. Or else it will dump out the program when it is having errors. Program errors unnayఅనుకోండి, it will dump out the programs from the main memory. Or to access and modify the parameters of system calls, it can get access and modify the parameters of system calls. It can also do that in the main memory. Or else to perform IO to and from user memory, etc. So to perform the IO. So for these reasons, the OS will be given unrestricted access to the main memory when the OS getting executed in the kernel mode. Clear, guys? Now let's move to the other topic. So this is all about your basic hardware and base limit and base register and limit register, right? So this is all about yeah, guys. So base and limit registers over. Your next concept is address binding. Your next topic is address binding. So what do you mean by address binding? When the program is getting loaded from the secondary memory to the main memory, right, then you are supposed to bind the address, right? So we will see what is address binding. Guys, up to this it is clear. Can I move to the address binding topic, ma? You are clear now up to this point, whatever the things I discussed? Yes, right. Okay, so I am moving to the next topic called address binding. Because guys, this unit, the first topics will be theory based only. So better you can take the running notes. Better you can take the running notes with the points I am taking, right? Right. So if you take initially your program, it resides on disk. Initially it resides on disk, right? As a binary executable file. Binary executable file. So you can say a program resides on a disk as a binary executable files. Then the program must be brought into the memory. That means a program from the disk, from the secondary memory, it has to be brought into the memory. So remember guys, here the memory is nothing but your main memory. It has to be brought into the memory, right, and placed within a process for the execution. So it has to be loaded in the memory. Then the process may be moved between disk and memory during the execution. So if the instructions are over, the program can be loaded back to the disk, or from the disk it can be moved to the memory, right, during the execution. Now the process on the disk that are waiting to be brought into the memory for the execution are put in the input queue. So if the programs are ready to be executed, then they will be put in the input queue initially, right? Now here the addresses may be represented in a different ways during these steps. So when you are the program is in the disk, it is having a kind of address. When it is getting loaded into the main memory, it is having a kind of address, right? You are getting me, guys? Addresses may be represented in different ways during these steps. Now, addresses in the source program are generally symbolic. Yes or no? If you are writing in the code, right, and you are declaring a variable like that, right? Here you will be when you are defining a variable means for that variable A, the address has to be generated with this scanf. Yes or no, percentile D, like that you will be generating an address and you are trying to give the values. We are trying to store the values for this variable. So that is the reason I can say addresses in the source code are generally symbolic. In the source code, the addresses are symbolic. Now, a compiler typically binds the symbolic addresses to relocatable addresses. When you are compiling the source code, what the compiler will do is, it will bind these symbols into the relocatable addresses. For example, I can say it is 14 bytes from the beginning of this module. ఎక్కడైతే స్టార్ట్ చేస్తున్నానో అక్కడ నుంచి 14 bytes వరకు మీన్స్ 14 bytes కాదు, లెట్స్ కన్సిడర్ ఇంటీజర్ అంటున్నాను కదా, వాట్ ఈస్ ద సైజ్ ఆఫ్ ఇంటీజర్? 2 bytes. సో 2 bytes ఫ్రమ్ ద beginning of the module, like that. When the compiler is getting executed, right, it binds the symbolic address to the relocatable address. Then the linkage editor or the loader, మనం ఎప్పుడైతే కంపైల్ చేస్తున్నామో it will be linked with some DLLs, then it will be loaded into the memory by making use of the loaders, right? So here it turns the relocatable address to the absolute address. Try to understand, guys. In the source code, your program is means it is called the variables, right? In terms of the symbolic addresses, they will be represented. Then when you are compiling that, the symbolic address is binded into the relocatable address, and when you are linking or the loading, then it turns, right, or it binds the relocatable address to absolute address, such as I can tell the absolute address as, for example, I am giving like this 74014. So because he has taken it as 14 bytes, textbook loan example from the starting of the module. So it is giving the absolute address of this symbol as 74014. Why? Because 74000 is the base address, the starting address of this module. That means in the memory, actually, where your program is loaded, right? So the starting is 74000 and 14 is the size like he is giving, so that it is referring the absolute address as 74000 plus 14. That is 74014. Right? Now, what do you mean by this binding? I can say each binding, what do you mean by this binding is mapping from one address space to the another address space. What do you mean by address binding here is mapping one address space to another address space. You got it, guys? What do you mean by address binding here? From compiler code to the symbolic address to relocatable address to the absolute address. So how you map this is called address binding. You got it, guys? Yes? Understood, ma, these points? Could you please slow down? Yeah. You got these points, guys? Binding thing. What do you mean by address binding is mapping one address space to the another address space is called binding. Because you are binding the addresses here, you can call it as address binding. Yes or no, ma? Yes, see ma, address binding. So initially, whenever you are executing a program, if you take the source code, the variables will be represented as the symbolic. So call it as symbolic address. Then when you are compiling the program, that symbolic address is mapped to the relocatable address. What do you mean by this relocatable address means? From the starting of the module, what is the size of that particular variable or a particular instruction, whatever, right? That is called relocatable address. Then when you are loading or linking, then that is binded to the absolute address, mapped to the absolute address. What do you mean by this absolute address is it will give you some address. That address is nothing but your base address plus your size of that, right? Because here I have taken it as 14 and the starting address as 74,000. I am giving the absolute address as 74,014. So what do you mean by this binding is mapping from one address space to another address space is called binding. Clear, Anil? Got it, Mark? Yeah. Now, guys, are you comfortable with this whiteboard? You are understanding better if when I'm using the whiteboard, Mark? Yeah. Yes. Then binding of instructions and the data to the memory address. Binding of, remember, binding of this instructions and the data to memory addresses. Whatever the program instructions or program data is there, binding of them to memory address can be done in three different steps. It can be done at compile time, or it can be done in load time, or it can be done in execution time. It can be done in execution time. Remember, guys, binding of your program instructions plus data, binding of this instructions and data to the memory address can be done in the following steps. So it can be done in the compile time, or it can be done in the load time, or it can be done in the execution time. So when can be done, we will see now. So if you take the compile time, if you know at compile time where the process will reside in the memory, if you know at the compile time only, right, where the process will reside in memory, then absolute code can be generated. So initially, when the compile time only, if you know where your program is residing in the memory, where the program is residing in the memory, right, then absolute code can be generated directly, the absolute code. So what do you mean by this absolute address? Right, it can be done at the load time actually, but if you know the memory at the time of the compile only, directly the absolute code is generated. So for example, if you know that your program starts from the location R, it will reside starting at location R, then the generated compiler code will start at this location and extend up, right? It will extend from here. So my program if you know at the compile time, then the compiler code will start loading from this R location. Right? And remember, after some time, if the starting location has been changed, then it will be necessary to recompile your code. Remember, After that, this can be done by the OS, no? When you know that this position has been changed by because of so many reasons, I will discuss about those reasons. Sorry, I will discuss about those reasons when I am discussing about this fragmentation. For this, you try to remember the thing that is after compile means when you are compiling the program, when you are compiling the program. So initially you got to know that it started from R, and after some time you are informed or you got to know that it changed its position R. Then you are supposed to recompile your code. So what kind of programs can be what kind of programs can be bounded, right, at this compile time is your MS-DOS format programs, and as well .com format programs can be bounded at compile time. So the address binding of this type of this format programs can be done at the compile time. Remember. Now coming to the load time, it is means if it is not known at the compile time where the process will reside in the memory, then the compiler must generate the relocatable code. Avuna kada? At the time of the compile time, if you don't know where it is residing the memory, it has to generate the relocatable code. So in the previous slide, we have seen that how it will generate the relocatable code. So it will simply tell that from the starting, it will occupy these many bytes. Like that, it will tell, right? Then the compiler must generate the relocatable code. In this case, the final binding is delayed until load time. The binding will not be done with the memory at the compiler time. It will be done or it will be delayed till the load time. Right? Again, if the starting address changes, we need to reload only the user code to incorporate this change value. So here also, if the starting address changes, so what you need means what you have to do is you are supposed to reload only the user code to incorporate this changes. So let's consider it was loaded from 1000 initially. Now the starting address changed it to 1500. That means you are supposed to load your program starting from the 1500 again. Now at the execution time, if the process can be moved during its execution from one memory segment to the another segment, then the binding must be delayed until runtime. Right? So initially your process is executing your instructions at some point, and after that it is moving to the other segment. Somewhere the other instruction is there. Right? So if this is the case, if the process can be moved during its execution from one memory segment to the another segment, then the binding must be delayed until the execution time or until the run time. This is the most general purpose operate means it is the method which is used by most of the general purpose operating systems. The third one, execution time. Right? So compile time means if you know where your program is loaded in the memory at the time of compile time only, you can directly do the binding at compile time. If you don't know at compile time, you can do it load time. And if you know that your program will be referring to the different memory segments, it is moving from one memory segment to the other memory segment, then you are supposed to use the mapping at the runtime or at the execution time, right? So this is all absolute compile time, load time, and execution time. So this is the diagram which was given for the multi-step processing of a user program. So this is the source code will be given to the compiler or the assembler first. This we can call it as compile time, right? It will be giving you the object module. Then it will be given to the linker, right? It will be linked with the other object modules. Then after linking, it will load, right? After loading, it will be added with the system libraries and all what are required for the execution, right? Then after this, means after linking, it will give the load module, and this load module will be given to the loader, where your system libraries, everything will be given for this. So this entire time you can call it as load time. Linking and loading together call it as load time, right? So then after in memory, binary memory image, your program will be now loaded into the memory for the execution. So that is the reason you can call it as execution time or runtime. So these are dynamically loaded system library which are required for your program execution. Everything will be dynamically loaded into the memory, right? And your program will be getting executed. So this is how your user program can be executed. Guys, clear up to this? Right? This is all about address binding. This is all about your address binding. Now the next topic is logical versus physical address space. Physical address space. The next topic is logical versus physical address space. Let me decrease the size of the pen. Yes. Yeah. Guys, let me take a break now. I'll have some water and come. Then we will continue with our class. Right? Okay, guys, can I take a break? I'll take the break. Yeah, I'll have some water and come. Right? So then we will be seeing the next topics. Logical versus physical address space is there. Then we will see what is dynamic loading, then dynamic linking and shared libraries. Right? Then we have swapping. We will see we could complete that or not. If you can complete till swapping, okay, two topics we could able to complete. Right? Yeah. Let me take a break, guys. Yes, ma. If you can see this, logical versus physical address space. Yeah. So first you should know what is logical address and what is physical address, right? So here the logical address is the address generated by the CPU. You're getting my voice is it audible? Can I continue, guys? Yeah, right. Let's see what is logical address is. Logical address is the address. It is generated by the CPU. Now, what is physical address? The physical address is the address that is loaded into the memory address register of the memory. Right? Physical address is the address that is loaded into the memory address register of the memory, right? See, the concept of logical address space that is bound to the separate physical address space is central to proper, it is central to proper memory management. So why we are using the two different types of addresses? Why we are using this logical address concept is for the proper memory management. So where your program is loaded in the main memory, right? To tell you that we'll be using this logical address, right? So generated by the CPU, also referred to as virtual address. This is not the permanent address, ma. It is the virtual address, right? So this address will be changing every time you load a program, every time you execute a program, right? Physical address is, it is the address seen by the memory unit, which was loaded in the secondary memory, right, which was loaded in the secondary memory. In the secondary memory where actually your program is residing, that is called physical address. So logical physical addresses are same in compile time and load time address binding schemes, right? And the logic and physical addresses differ in the execution time, right? Program load అయ్యేంత వరకు program compile అయ్యేంత వరకు load అయ్యేంత వరకు your logical physical address is same, but when you are executing your program, execution time lo, at the time of your execution, the program execution time lo, this logical and physical addresses will differ, right? And remember, the set of all logical addresses are generated by a program which you call it as logical address space. Remember, let me open this code, right? Right? So logical address means what? It is generated by CPU. Physical address is, it is the space where actually a program loads. Right? Where actually it is in the memory, in the disk. Now, the set of all logical addresses are generated by a program. You call it as logical address space. Guys, try to understand, right? All the logical addresses are generated by a program called logical address space, and the set of all physical addresses corresponding to these, all the physical addresses that are corresponding to logical addresses, right? You can call them as physical address space. The set of all physical addresses corresponding to these logical addresses is a physical address space, right? And remember, at the compile time and the load time or linking time, right, the physical and the logical addresses are same. But at the execution time, right, the logical and physical addresses are different. So at the that is the reason at the time of the execution, whatever the logic is there, that logical address you can call it as, logical address is called as virtual address. Virtual address. Guys, try to understand, right? So what is the logical address? Generated by the CPU, right? So all the logical addresses are generated by a program. You call it as logical address space. And the physical address is actually where actually your program resides physically, physical address, right? And the set of all physical addresses are corresponding to logical addresses is a physical address space. So in the physical address space, what happens is all the physical addresses are stored corresponding to its logical addresses, right? So the compile time and load time address binding methods generate the identical logical and physical addresses. So here the logical address, physical address is same. These two are identical at the compile time and at the loading time or linking time. You can call it as at the loading time, linking time, right? These both are identical. But at the execution time, the logical and the physical addresses are different. So that is the reason at the execution time, these two are not identical. So that is the reason at the execution time, the logical address, you can call it as virtual address. Now, the runtime mapping from virtual address to the physical address, how you can map this virtual address to the physical address is, it can be done by a hardware device called as Memory Management Unit, MMU. The mapping of this virtual address to the physical address. So how you're going to map this virtual address to the physical addresses? This can be done by a hardware unit. You have a separate hardware unit which will be mapping this virtual address to the physical address. That is called Memory Management Unit, right? And remember here, what is the base register you have, right? What is the base register you have, which will hold the starting point of the program. Now you call it as a relocation register, right? And here the value in the relocation register is added to every address generated by a user program, right? At the time the address is sent to the memory. So whenever you are sending the address to the memory, right? Whenever you send the address, you send to the memory, then what happens is the value in the relocate register is added to the address generated by the user program. Address generated by the user program. So let me see, do I have that in the PPT or not, for your better understanding? Yes, it is there. Now, so what is memory unit? It's a hardware unit that maps the virtual to the physical address, right? So in MMU scheme, what happens is the value in the relocation register is added to every address generated by a user process at the time, right? At the time it is sent to the memory. You're getting me, guys? So the user program deals with logical addresses. It never sees the real physical address. So whenever your program is getting executed in the CPU, it will not care about the physical address. It will never see the real address. Real ga the hard disk lo ekkadundi ane daniki sambandham ledandi. Where it actually loaded in the main memory is important, right? So that is the reason the user programs deals with the logical addresses only. You're getting me, guys? So how this can be done is, see, CPU, this is the logical address. This is the address which was generated by the CPU. So whenever the CPU is generating a address, whenever the CPU or the user process is generating the address, then what happens is, what MMU will do is, for this address, it will add the value in the relocation register. Relocation register is nothing but the base register, right? So from the base register where your program is loaded, right? You are getting me, guys? Right? So what happens is the value means see, the value in the relocate register is added to every address generated by the user program, whatever the address the user program is generating, that is 346, right? It is the address generated by the user process, right? Then it will be added to the address in the relocation register. After adding these two, it will be sent to the memory. Right? అంటే మెమరీలో ఈ పర్టిక్యులర్ ఇన్స్ట్రక్షన్ ఎక్కడ ఉంది అని ఫెచ్ చేయడానికి యూజర్ ఈస్ కాలింగ్ ఏ అడ్రస్ మా దట్ ఈస్ లాజికల్ అడ్రస్ యూజర్ నోస్ ఓన్లీ ద లాజికల్ అడ్రస్ యూజర్ నోస్ ఓన్లీ ద లాజికల్ అడ్రస్ రైట్ దెన్ whenever the user process is calling the logical address, whenever the user process is calling the logical address, right, what MMB will do for this is it will add the value, it will add the value to the relocation register value before sending it to the memory. So after you add this logical address with the value of the relocation register, you will be getting the actual physical address. Actual physical address. So this is the physical address which is referring in the memory. Right now, if the base address is 14,000, then an attempt by the user to address the location 0 dynamically, the relocation address is 14,000 only. But if you want to get an access to the location 346, then that will be mapped to the 14,346. Now, as I told you, the user process never sees the real physical address. The program can create a pointer to the location 346, store it in the memory, manipulate it and compare it with the other addresses. Right, all as the number 346 only. So it will consider the address as 346 only, but actually the load in the CPU will not be knowing. Right, only when it is used as a memory address, it is relocates to it is relocated relative to the base address. Right, the user program deals with logical addresses, but the memory mapping hardware converts the logical address into the physical address. So final location of the referred memory address is not determined until the reference is made. So until unless it will be referred, right, you will not be knowing where is the final location of the where is the final location in the memory, right? So for making you understand this, I'll take a simple example here. Yes, let's consider, I'm taking a small part. Let's consider the logical address is ranging from 0 to max, right? And the physical addresses are ranging from r plus 0 to r plus max, right? And where r is the base value. So whenever any program is calling some address, whenever it is the logical address, whenever it is calling the logical address, to refer to it, what MMU will do is it will add that to R. What is R here? R is the base address. So for the base address, the logical address will be added to get the physical address. Right? So the user process only generates this logical address which is ranging from 0 to maxima, right? The logical addresses must be mapped to physical addresses before they are used. Remember, before you are using them, they has to be mapped to the physical addresses. Guys, understood up to this point? Yes, ma, you understand this concept, physical address versus logical address? Yes. Now let's move to the next topic called dynamic loading. Next, let's move to the other topic called dynamic loading, right? Now, dynamic loading, right? So with dynamic loading, when you are using this dynamic loading, the routine is not loaded until it is called. So you are not loading anything until it was called. That means when the process is getting executed in the CPU, and when the process is calling that, when the process is calling that routine, right? Then only you are going to load it. So here with the dynamic loading, a routine is not loaded until it is called. So all routines are kept on disk in a relocatable load format, right? But only the main memory is loaded into the memory and it is executed. So first we start with only the main memory, the main program, only the main program first loaded into the memory, right? And when the main program is getting executed, and in that if it is calling any routines, that routine and a function unquote. It is calling a function called swap, or it is calling a function called add, anything of a function call this. When it is calling the function, then only that will be loaded. That is all, right? So all routines are kept on the disk in a relocatable load format. The main program is loaded into the memory and it is executed. And when a routine needs to call another routine, the calling routine first checks to see whether the other routine has been loaded. ఫస్ట్ మనం మెయిన్ అనేది ఒక రొటీన్ అనుకుందాం. మెయిన్ కూడా ఒక ఫంక్షనే కదండి. మెయిన్ ఈజ్ ఒక రొటీన్. వెన్ ద మెయిన్ ఈజ్ కాలింగ్ ద అదర్ రొటీన్, first it will check whether that routine has been loaded or not. If it is not loaded, the relocatable linking loader is called to load the desired routine into the memory and to update the program's address tables to reflect this change. Then the control is passed to the newly loaded routine. You're getting me, guys? What do you mean by dynamic loading is until a routine is called, it will not be loaded into the memory, right? First we'll load the main program, right? So that is a routine, let's consider. So if that routine is calling another routine, it will check whether that routine is loaded or not. If not loaded, it will call the relocatable loader to load the program into the memory. After loading it, it will call the other routine. The other routine will take the control. The other routine will take the control, right? So the advantage is this is the better memory space utilization. That means unused routines is never loaded. So you need not to load the entire code into the memory. So what is required, that is only loaded, right? So it is useful when large amount of codes are needed to be handled infrequently occurring cases. So మీకు ఒక పెద్ద ఫైల్ ఉంది, you to get executed, normally you load the entire program, but with the dynamic loading you are not loading the entire program, you are loading only the program which is required, which is only required for the time, right? So advantage is it is useful when large amount of codes are needed to be handled frequently occurring cases, right? So with this, what we can do is, although the total program size may be large, the portion that is used may be much smaller, right? So no special support from the OS is required, implementing through the program design only. So for that, remember, it is the responsibility of the users to design their programs to support the dynamic loading. The operating system may help the programmer by providing the library routines to implement the dynamic loading, but OS will not be doing it. The user only has to do it through the program design. But when the user is designing this program, the OS will support with the routines. Sorry, it will support with the library routines, right? That is about the dynamic loading. Next, dynamic linking, right? So that is nothing but what? Dynamically linked libraries. Dynamically, you are linking the libraries, right? So what do you mean by dynamically linking libraries is, dynamically linking libraries are system libraries that are linked to the user programs when the programs are running. These are the system libraries only. But if you link to the user programs when they are running, then you can call them as dynamic linking. So, ఈ diagram లో అర్థమవుతుంది. Yes, if you are doing it dynamically, see ఇక్కడ చూడండి. If you see here, right? So dynamically loaded system library or dynamic linking, right? So if you are loading the system libraries dynamically at the time of this runtime, then this linking is called dynamic linking. You are getting me, guys? Right? Dynamic linking is clear now? Right? You are going to load only the routines when they are called, right? Now, what do you mean by dynamic linking is linking the libraries, linking the system libraries, right? When the program is running. Right? Now, let's see some points that are related to this. In static linking system libraries, in static linking, you can means if you are using the static linking, right? The system libraries are treated like any other object module, and they are combined by the loader into the binary program image. If you are using the static linking, the system libraries are treated like any other object module. It will be treated as the code only, right? And they are combined by the loader into the binary program image. Along with the program, the libraries also will be treated as the same, and they will be linked to the programs. Now, but when you are using the dynamic linking, the linkage is postponed until the execution time. This feature is usually used with the system libraries such as language subroutine libraries. Right? With the language subroutine libraries, right? You can use this dynamic linking, right? So without dynamic linking, each program on the system must include a copy of the language library in the executable image. This will waste both the disk space and the main memory space. Right? Along with the program, you are not loading them, but you are linking them when needed. Until the execution time, they will not be linked. Right? You are understanding, guys? If you are using the static linking, the libraries are treated like any other object module, and they are combined by the loader into the binary program image. But in the dynamic linking, the linking is postponed until the execution time. So this feature usually used by the system libraries. For what kind of system libraries we will use is if you want to use the language subroutine libraries, right? So if you try to use this language subroutine libraries without dynamic linking, right? Each program on a system must include a copy of that, right? It has to include a copy of its language library in the executable image. This will waste the disk space. Now, with the dynamic linking, a stub is included in the image for each library routine reference. So instead of putting the entire library as an image in your program, right? Here what it will use is a small piece of code. You can call it as stub, S-T-U-B, right? What it will do is it will be included in the image for each library routine reference, right? So what is a stub is? It's a small piece of code that indicates how to locate the appropriate memory resident library routine, or how to load the library if the routine is not already present, right? So the stub is used to locate the appropriate memory resident library routine, because we are not loading along with the program. What we are trying to do is, right, we'll be putting some piece of code in the dynamic linking. This code will help you to locate the appropriate memory resident library routine. So memory lo ad actually ga ekkada undi, right? You can able to take it, right? Then when the stub is executed, it checks to see whether the needed routine is already in memory. If it is not, the program loads the routine into the memory, right? You are getting me, guys? When the stub is executed, ఏదైనా program execute అవుతుంది, it is calling the stub ని కాల్ చేసింది అంటే ఏంటంటే that particular routine has to be loaded into the main memory because that is required for the program execution, right? So when you are executing this stub, it checks whether the needed routine is already in the memory. If it is not, then the program loads the routine into the memory. Now, the stub replaces itself with the address of the routine and executes the routine. Now, what happens is the stub replaces itself with the address of the routine. So, where we are having this code, stub code, there it loads the routine. Right? Stub will be replaced with the routine and that routine will be executed. Now, this the next time that particular code segment is reached, the library routine is executed directly. Why? Because it was already there. So you need not to dynamically link that, right? Next time when the routine is called, the OS checks if the routine is in the process memory space or not. If it is there, it will directly execute. Again, you need not to link it again. That is, no cost for dynamic linking. Under this schema, all processes that use a language library execute only one copy of the library code. So I'll explain you this with a diagram for your better understanding. We are discussing about dynamic linking, right? So, a program, right? And your program is having some routines. Right? So you are not loading them directly, right? And you are not linking them directly. Instead, what you are doing is in your program, you are executing this stub, right? So whenever a particular program is calling this routine, instead of executing that routine, because that was not loaded, it will be executing the stub. When the stub is executed, what this will do is, it will load the routine into the memory. It will replace this. The stub will be replaced with the routine. And that means we are having only one copy of the routine here. And next time the other process is calling this routine, what OS will do is, OS first will check for the routine in the memory space, If this routine is available, the second process also will try to execute the same routine. That means it need not to load the routine again. So with this, you are going to save so much of space, right? So that is all about the dynamic linking. Right? Now, you have the other concept, swapping. So before that, let's also discuss about the shared libraries, right? We'll discuss about the shared libraries. So whenever you are using a libraries, right? A library may be replaced by a new version, and all programs that reference the library will automatically use the new version. Ikkada entante manam dynamic link cheyakunda will have the shared libraries. That means all the programs can share the libraries here. So each process need not to load the libraries individually. That means without dynamic linking, all such programs would need to be relinked to gain access to the new library, so that Programs will not accidentally execute new or incompatible version of the libraries. Right, the version information is included in both the programs and the library. So here what is happening is whatever the shared libraries, right? Whenever you are means you are designing the libraries in such a way that once that libraries are loaded into the memory where all the processes can use, so these are called new library versions. These are called new library versions. So this kind of thing, new library version, you can call it as shared libraries, right? That means the other programs linked before the new library was installed will continue using the old library only, right? That means whenever you are getting a new versions, you are supposed to install the new shared libraries so that you can be given with the more features, right? And remember, your dynamic linking and shared libraries require help from the operating system, right? Next, coming to this swapping. Guys, can I stop for today? Actually, I'm getting my throat pain